Often when I make these itch videos, I try to put them into groups, whether by style or genre, but a lot of the times I end up with a bunch of games that don't really have a cohesive theme. Either they're too weird to find a common selection of games, or they vibe with others but have completely different gameplay styles. But I don't think it's fair to not give them a shout because of my own weird rules. So this time we're going a bit eclectic. Here's a list of games on itch that I like, with little to no connections whatsoever. There's a specific brand of RPG Maker MV games out there that don't quite fit the typical image of RPG Maker, and God Opens the Door is one of those. This side-scrolling adventure game tells the story of a young boy locked in his room by his alcoholic mother, when one day a crack in the window gives him an opportunity to leave. What follows is a dark horror story where, and I'm quoting the itch page here, you flush your mom down the toilet. There are some content warnings on the page too, and if you're going to try this game out, I would really recommend heeding them. It's got that typical RPG Maker edge to it that you might find upsetting. What really drew me to the game wasn't the premise. It was the art. The game is made with a mixture of digital and practical effects. The character movement, for example, is stop motion, and it looks great. The actual game environments look pretty good, but where it really shines is in the cutscene segments. The art looks fantastic. It actually reminds me of Hugo Limbo's work, which is a very worthy comparison. There's some clever use of typography too, some characters' dialogue jumps about the text boxes, and the cutscenes have some real kinetic movement to them. If I had to critique it at all, I would probably say that it doesn't give the audience enough credit. The whole story is kind of cryptic in the beginning, and the implication of the toilet's relevance to the family, combined with the other imagery, paints a disturbing picture. Right at the end though, the game just flat out explains the story to your face, which really isn't necessary. I'd credit most people with the intelligence to be able to follow the story without it, and it kind of took the sting out of it a little bit. Other than that, it's a beautifully tragic game with fantastic art and some unique blending of practical and digital effects. The feeling of being trapped and left behind is horrifying, especially for anyone in a small dead-end town. Cover Me in Leaves is a visual story about just that. A nameless girl who lives and works in small-town America, struggling with her identity and loneliness until she decides to get her first tattoo, a small leaf on her wrist. This game is beautiful. The backgrounds are a blend of pixel glitch art and nature, depicting a decaying world struggling to hold on. This game screams melancholy. It's a short meditation on a town where industry has long since been abandoned and nothing new seems to happen. The best thing to do there is leave, but our protagonist, for whatever reason, has yet to do that, despite everyone around her already having done it. So she continues to work in the bar she gets catcalled at, while she hears stories about hate crimes that happen to people she vaguely knew, and thinks about the old wood mill that used to keep the town running. The writing in this piece is poetic and sad, but it's not entirely without hope, even if it feels hopeless in the beginning. Despite never having lived in small-town America, I can completely understand the kind of place this story inhabits. There's a bittersweetness to the way it's described. There are bad people there, and it almost feels like life is at a standstill, but I don't feel any malice towards the town itself in the story. The descriptions of the forest she roams and the nature surrounding the town contrast pretty heavily with the bar and streets she walks. It's a short story, so I won't say much more. Just give it a read. Easily one of the most interesting RPG Maker games I've played in a long time, Time is Solid here is a game about moving on. The premise is simple. You find yourself in a museum with 3 dirty paintings, which you're tasked with cleaning. This is, of course, a metaphorical cleaning, as the paintings represent 3 people who've been unable to move on to the afterlife for one reason or another. The protagonist is aided by Charon, except in this world he swapped his boat and oar for frames and paint. Now's probably a good time to discuss the art, because more than likely you're looking at Charon and asking what the hell is going on. All of the characters, including the protagonist, were generated using machine learning, which gives them a really uncanny feeling. They remind me a lot of those pictures where you can't identify any objects in the room. You can tell they're shaped like humans, and there must be some logic to their figure, but there just isn't. This applies to both the friendly NPCs and the enemies, and every time you load into a painting for the first time, you see the artwork form as if it's being created in front of you. It's a really creepy effect that does a great job of setting the tone. Beyond the story and the art, the music is phenomenal. Each track is unique, and some of them are absolute bops. The whole package is just so unique, and I think it executes the story very well. But once again, there are some very heavy themes in this one. The first painting in particular deals with domestic abuse in a really clever and horrifying way, and each painting uses different gameplay mechanics to tie into the character's story. Time is Solid here is a unique, artsy game unlike anything else I've played on itch, and it 100% deserves your attention. We all know Ouija boards are creepy. Whether you believe they open portals to another world or not, I'm always happy to see them pop up in horror stories, because they're really cool aesthetically. Paranormal Buddies is about two teenagers, Takeo and Hana. Hana decided one day to buy a Ouija board from a local store, and convinces her friend to film them using it. The protagonist, Takeo, is the typical skeptic foil to Hana's ditzy intrigue. She not only wants to catch evidence of ghosts, she also wants to make friends with one. What I love most about the setup is how it ties into the aesthetics. The game is played from the perspective of the video camera, and it's set in the 90s. Combine the PS1 models with the grainy scan lines of old video cameras, and you've got yourself a game that looks really cool. Even the promo art leans into that 90s anime art style. The way Hana animates is perfect for this combination, and all the jagged textures help to really sell that 90s feel. The gameplay is mostly your average visual novel. However, your choices are made by controlling the planchette and giving answers to Hana's questions. Depending on your answers, or lack thereof, the story changes, leading to 4 alternate endings. Each run only takes about 10 minutes, and the endings are absolutely worth hunting down. I'm not going to spoil them, but there are some amazing scares waiting for you after the last choice. The game probably could do with a slight proofread. It's not horrific by any means, but some of the dialogue is missing words, or just isn't grammatically correct. But again, not enough to spoil the whole package. So go try Paranormal Buddies. And don't worry, Toby doesn't bite. The ocean is horrifying. No, seriously, for something that takes up so much of the planet we live on, it's almost entirely unexplored. There's a reason why so many great horror stories tap into this. Anything could be lurking in the darkness, maybe even something we've purposefully kept hidden. I Spoke to God is a slow, atmospheric horror game where you delve into the dark depths of the ocean, in search of an underwater facility that mysteriously lost contact. The company you're working for is shady to say the least, and if anything goes wrong, they make it very clear that there won't be a rescue mission. What follows is a short journey where you repair the entrance to the facility and stumble across clues as to why no one is left alive. Your vision is extremely limited, both due to your light source and the fidelity of the models. Sometimes you won't even realize what it is you're looking at until you're staring it in the face. I'm always interested in how exploring space and exploring the ocean inspire similar feelings. They're both pitch black, you have little to no sound, you move extremely slowly, and you're all alone with no prospect of rescue. They're both environments not designed for humans to survive, which makes exploring them feel inherently dangerous. This game is extremely isolating, and it does a great job of creeping you out right until the end. I do have to add, and maybe this was just me, but the final section took me far too long to figure out where I was meant to go. I may have missed something, but I spent a lot of time wandering around. But if you end up like me, I'd recommend sticking it out to see how the game ends. time for the part of the video where I tell you about a game that feels like it was designed for exactly me. Low poly graphics, cryptic story, exploration, grungy sound effects, transmedia storytelling. Zero Abyssal Somewhere is a beautiful anomaly. Created by Nonoise, it's the first entry into a multi-part series about a knight passing through a dead world. There are at least 3 current parts to the story, the second being this YouTube video, and the third being 000 Tower of No One. Unfortunately, the last update on the third entry seems to have been almost 2 years ago, so I don't know if the project is on hiatus, but for now, I want to talk about the first one. Abyssal Somewhere is a game about exploring. You wander the ruins of this dying world, listening to the tales of civilizations from millennia gone by, the ancient stone giants that came from below, and the denizens that took up harpoons to fight them, the flood that washed them all away. All of it happened long before the ironclad being finds itself in this world. There's a sense of hopelessness. The only inhabitants left are specters, wandering aimlessly throughout the stone structures. Most of the gameplay is exploration, but your knight does have a sword which you can use to get through rooms full of spirits. Some hostile, most stagnant. This game has absolutely impeccable vibes. I love how empty and oppressive it feels. There's one part in particular that reminds me a lot of the end of the Ringed City in Dark Souls 3, the rolling deserts of a land completely gone to ruin. The climax of this entry sees you confronting some sort of angel, a being who's seen the entire history of this land, and asks the protagonist why they want to continue their journey. This whole section is fantastic. The music is so creepy, the dialogue is excellent, and it ends in an absolutely trippy way. I love this game. I really hope the developer continues their work, because I'm already invested in this world of stone and floods, where death is so much more than cold. Thanks for watching. As always, the games I've mentioned are in the description below. If any of them have intrigued you, then please go support them by playing them and leaving feedback on their pages. If you have any recommendations, please leave them below. Also, I've decided to set up a coffee, so if you feel like being generous, then you can check that out. Thank you so much for your support as always, and I'll see you again soon.